Welcome to yet another ThursdAI. Today is October 19th, and we're about to get started. I already see a few friends in the audience who I want to invite on stage, and then we're going to get started really soon to talk about actually many things, and it's going to be fun. We're going to cover some updates in open source LLMs, and we have a few fine tuners in the audience. I'm probably going to recap a little bit of my experience in San Francisco AI engineer. I'm actually wearing the t-shirt right now, but this is a voice only medium, so you guys won't be able to see. Maybe I'll post a selfie. Or maybe we should post a selfie every time. It's like, hey, we're started with a selfie, so you guys know how I look. And maybe I'll cover some AI engineer stuff. And we're mostly going to cover this last week, even though kind of a week before there were no updates. So technically there's 2 weeks of updates to give you guys, but I don't want to go as far back as 2 weeks because we will never stop talking. So mostly updates from this week. And there has been plenty already, including some breaking news ones. So I'll start sharing as well. Next week I may have some very interesting news regarding ThursdAI, but until then, you guys will just have to remember to tune in. And I think there's plenty of us here to also get. Okay, so actually, I'm gonna thread it back to the AI engineer event. So last week, almost 2 weeks ago, actually, because now, last week I went to San Francisco and I see Abe in the audience. I see some other folks to a conference that was started by Swix, also a friend of the pod, the host of Latent Space. And they invited me to be media. Everybody who comes to ThursdAI already knows this. I've said this multiple times. So if you hear me repeat this, I'm sorry, but also there's new folks in the audience. And I was really invited to just talk to folks and talk to speakers, talk to folks as well. And I actually recorded a few spaces from there. I want to say 3 spaces. One of them with Wix recapping everything. One of them with Sasha, aka Hardgoofer, who announced the AI Engineer Foundation, and one of them with Daniel, the program manager for TypeScript, who talked about type chat. And besides the spaces, I also had the chance to interview a bunch of folks and obviously be in the audience to talk with a lot of AI engineers. And it was actually great to see how many. This was a very limited summit. There was 500 people hand selected, and the talks were hand selected. And it was great to see how many people are working on some of the things we talk about from week to week, right? So this was a whole 500 people audience where if you say RAG, everybody knows what you're talking about, which is retrieval augmented generation, which we've covered multiple times here. And if you say fine-tune LLMs, everybody will definitely ask you which ones are you fine-tuning, if it's Llama or Mistral. And I found it wonderful to just be in that crowd. So it's like being here with you guys, but with 500 other people. I want to shout out a few friends of the pod, listeners of ThursdAI, who came to me and say, hey, Alex, we know you and we tune in. And Francisco and some other folks from Argentina, some folks from Spain. I was humbled as hell, guys. Honestly, this whole thing with ThursdAI was just me talking with some friends on stage, and suddenly there's people from around the world who are tuning in and listening, and they come to me and say, this is a great thing to help us. And yeah, please share with your friends, because if it helps them and they join our community and the community grows, and then there's a bunch of opportunities within this community as well for connections. And if I'm able to hold the space for all of that, I'm very, very happy and I'm very satisfied. So definitely remember sharing as well. I was really humbled with that. Honestly, I did not expect somebody coming up to me and say, hey, you're doing a great job, face to face. On Twitter, yes. On DMs, yes. Some of you also send me the emoji that I leave at the end of the newsletter. I really appreciate all of you who read all the way till the end to see the emoji of the week. So if you get the next newsletter and you send me the emoji in a DM somewhere, I'll be very happy with that as well. And so during this conference, the whole idea of an AI engineer was brought to light. And I think I saw a tweet from Simon Willison, who basically said something like, prompt engineering may go away as a concept because more and more models are getting better fine-tuned on instructions. Models are getting better at understanding what you want without prompts. AI art prompt engineering is definitely going away, since DALL-E just does the prompt engineering for you, right? If you use DALL-E 3 at this point, and I think last week it opened up to 100% of people, then it does the prompt engineering for you. You basically say what you want and then you talk to it, which is incredible. And so I think this idea of prompt engineering as a sole job is going away. However, AI engineer specifically is more about just writing and prompts. It's a lot of stuff together. It's how to productize models. It's how to maybe have a gut feeling about what type of models to use for which purpose. It's intuition about when to use AI or to not use AI, because not everything needs AI as a solution so far. And so this AI engineering thing is up and coming, and definitely folks are recommended to check out the summary we did with Twix. I posted this on my little last week's ThursdAI. And the one thing that I thought that wasn't very well mentioned, and I want to mention this strongly, and we've been talking about this literally, Junaid, like literally every week since we started, is the multimodality aspect. And by the way, all talks were recorded on YouTube, and you can rewatch all of them. So everything that I'm saying, if it connects with you and you want to go and watch, all the talks are recorded. And some folks actually had like thread about this. If you can find one, just let me know. There was a talk from Logan Kilpatrick and Simon from OpenAI, and they talked about the multimodal future that's coming to all of us. And I've been excited about multimodality. I've recently got access to GPT-4 Vision, which was incredible. Honestly, I haven't tested it as much as I thought I would once we get it, because I'm really waiting for the API. And so obviously the folks from OpenAI, they have access to the API of GPT-4 Vision, and they showed some incredible things on stage while preparing us for this multimodal future that's coming towards us very fast. One of the things they showed is a prompt engineer type experience where you upload a picture, GPT-4 in like one pipeline, right? Like one basic web page that they built. You upload a picture, you ask GPT-4 Vision to understand this picture, then you ask it to turn it into a prompt, then you give DALL-E, which they also have like an API, you give DALL-E this prompt, and this prompt then gets drawn. Then you upload both the new generated picture from DALL-E and the original picture back to GPT-4 Vision, and then ask it to compare, because this multimodal vision model has the abilities to like take input of multiple images, and you can ask it to compare. And then you ask it, hey, based on this comparison, generate a new prompt that will also include the stuff that you forgot or omitted, right? So basically like a loop agent AI engineer for image generation. And I looked at this demo and I was like, wow, there's so much to be achieved with getting this API for GPT-4. And then connecting it to this week, Adept AI, the company that we've all talked about a few weeks ago, that released this model called Persimmon, a company who was founded by a few of the authors of the original Transformers paper, and some of them I think are no longer there, released an open source model for us that's multimodal as well. It's called Fuyu 8B, so 8 billion parameters. And it's a multimodal trained on understanding charts and UI and does OCR very quick. And it's actually a very interesting release from them because it doesn't include I think a vision transformer. I'm not fully diving deep into like how they built it, but all our friends who are reading the paper are saying that it's a very simple architecture, and it's very impressive that they arrived at a multimodal model with a very simple architecture. So actually we'll go and pin this to the top of the tweet for you guys, so you'd be able to see. But they have the Hugging Face demo right from the start, which is great. And I want to go and find you guys the multimodal link, and they have the Hugging Face demo, and it's actually pretty good. So, and an additional thing that we always talk about is comparing to GPT-4 is unfair, especially for open source, right? So we basically, I think Arthur, you and I talked about this. In my head, there's like two benchmarks. There's one benchmark of multi-billion-dollar companies training with like many of their PhDs training like the best of the best models, like Claude, Anthropic, and GPT-4, etc. And there's almost another benchmark, for now at least, for open source models. And so for this specific vision model, I have a different benchmark. I cannot compare it to GPT-4 Vision. However, I compare it to the other vision multimodal models we have, like IDEFICS from Hugging Face, which is an 80 billion parameter big model that you cannot run by yourself. And I think it compares very well to the IDEFICS one. We also had Lava, and there's multiple attempts at replicating Flamingo and all these different like vision models, and connecting the thread between kind of the demo on stage from Logan and Simon. And basically what they said is multimodal is coming. 2024 will be the year of multimodal. And really, we got this release called Fuyu from Adept. I think I'm definitely connecting with that vision. Multimodal is coming very fast, and image is just one modality, sound and audio is another, and there will be other modalities as well. The additional thing that everybody talked on stage in the AI engineer event was agents. Many agent companies were there. Some demos in the crowd from different companies would actually, they would ask you for your URL and then go and generate an agent that knows all of the content in that URL, so you can talk to your website. Basically, I did this for ThursdAI. It was great. It was actually able to answer most of the questions that I had about like different episodes. Tixi, what was the company? Shout out to Tixi. They really impressed me with their demo. And so these agents that are coming to us will also enjoy this real uprise in multimodality as well. So if you're currently considering that agents are only text and their helpfulness is limited, let's say, definitely look forward for GPT-4 API or this little Fuyu 8B multimodal model. All of these vision capabilities, agents will basically get eyes very soon, if not already. And just imagining what agents could do while also seeing what you want them to do, and not only like reading your emails, but also like seeing your images, or I don't know, seeing whatever tweets you're tweeting, or seeing the results and graphs of your training runs, for example. Like all these things, agents will definitely get way better. So Fuyu is announced. I think it's interesting to talk about also that the highlight in the Fuyu announcement. So Fuyu has this very simple architecture that breaks down an input into little chunks, and then there's linear projection on top of them. Again, I'm not a data scientist, so if data scientists in the crowd or on stage are welcome to chime in and tell us like what's interesting about this. But what's interesting from what they've trained for is reading charts and understanding interfaces and UI. And I'll just remind everyone that Adept came out and raised a bunch of money, and they actually haven't released this, but they worked on something called Act 1, which is a model they trained to move your cursor for you and actually execute tasks in the browser. So they have a Chrome extension for that. I can't go to more details because Adept is also the only company that ever signed an NDA with the users of their like super secret project. I was one of those users. So I can tell you like what the previous version was. I will tell you that it's old now and almost irrelevant because the folks in Adept are working on something very interesting. And so it's great to see them also open sourcing a bunch of stuff. And those stuff is definitely going toward their multimodal future. So this is Adept Fuyu, and I recommend you guys check it out. There is a Hugging Face demo you can upload stuff to, and then you are more than welcome to check it out and let us know if you find it better or worse than, how should I say, GPT-4 Vision. It's probably worse, but better than other image models like IDEFICS and Lava and all these things. And how much worse it is because it's a small model that you can basically run on your computer. The second thing we have to talk about, and I always love covering this specific topic in open source LLMs, is Open Hermes was released by Tiknium. Tiknium is a dear friend of the pod. I just pinned it to the top of the space. The goat of open source. I think he open sourced like 3 models this week as something, and he always like at the nearness of the top of the charts. And so Tiknium announced Open Hermes 2. Hermes is this very well-performant data set and a set of models that Tiknium was fine-tuning for a long time on top of Llama. I think started with Llama and then Llama 2 as well. And this is the first model that's the first Hermes model that was trained on top of Mistral. And trained on 900,000 instructions. And we've talked about different attempts at getting more instructions as well, like last week or a week before. And this model is a tiny 7B model that joins the ranks of like almost almost matches some 70 billion parameter models in size, which is again a trend that we've seen. Zephyr was released last week. We haven't covered this as well from Hugging Face. Also a tiny model that beats a model's 10 size as large. I will just remind you guys that Llama 2 was released, I'll say July or August, like maybe not that much ago, like 2 months ago. And since then, we've seen incredible progresses in state of the art of models, just like tinier and better and more performant. And we see this literally from week to week. And Mistral, when it came out just 2 weeks ago, I want to say maybe 3 weeks ago, it was very clear for many folks from its performance that this is the model that all the fine tuners and open sourcers will yearn for and try to like fine tune. And since then, most of the top of the open source LLMs are now Mistral fine tuned. And the incredible thing that the Mistral team did, and they're welcome to join ThursdAI and talk about this, they released their models in Apache 2 license. They released it, if you guys remember, with a tweet with a BitTorrent link, and just like, here we go, world. And only then they released kind of the thread on Twitter and the standard procedures of releasing models. And very, very quickly we noticed that since then, almost the top 10 of all of fine tunes are like now fine tuned on Mistral. Not only that, we get like significantly tinier models, 7 billion parameters. You can run this on your M1 Mac fairly quickly. They now outperform almost all models up until the 70B benchmark. And on 70B, they're coming very, very close. So 2 things are happening at once here, right? Two threads are happening at once. We get better and better performance models in the large model area of like the 70B, and we saw Falcon 180B that everybody stopped talking about because it wasn't very interesting and it was hard to fine tune. And I haven't actually seen fine tune the Falcon since they released it. It was like a whole thing. But the smaller models are just climbing to the top of the charts, bidding on performance, bidding on a bunch of benchmarks, which also benchmarks are a whole thing that we will cover, and they're not great, but that's what we currently have. And Hermes is one of the top ones. And so how do I actually know that it's one of the top ones? Well, that's a whole other thing of how do you actually evaluate open source models. And everybody has their own approach. My approach is I have a few prompts that I run on multiple models. And also the best thing about the 7B models, Mistral, all these, is that you can actually run them on most Macs now, which is incredible. And so the way to do this, and I really wanted to feature them as well, and Tiknium shouted them out. There's a new software, new-ish, that I invited them to be here, but they couldn't be here. It's called LM Studio. And so I will actually pin this in additional tweet. If you have a newer Mac, M1 or M2, and you don't know how to create a Python environment and how to download all these things and how to take a model from Hugging Face and actually use it, well, now this is very easy. It's been easy with GPT-4 all, I think, from Nomic AI as well, but the UI is a little clunky for me. And I don't know, GPT-4 all like made my computer get stuck a little bit. So here's this thing called LM Studio, which Tiknium recommended, and I downloaded and absolutely loved it, which basically lets you to paste a Hugging Face link to any models and just run them on your Mac. And if you have a Mac, that's a very, very easy way to just test these models very quickly. And you can switch between them. You can load them, a model to memory and then unload, or they call it eject. And yeah, this is not sponsored or anything, just like a software that I use and I recommend you guys also to use, because again, these models are getting released every week, better and better. And this is like a very easy way to test them out. Junaid, have you had a chance to use LM Studio?
No, I'm still one of those people that's stuck on a Intel Mac. So I just wanted to chime in real quick and mention Ollama, which is one way that you can, if you're not on an M1 or an M2 Mac and you want to try to mess around with running some models locally, you can use Ollama. I'm doing it on my older MacBook Air and I have to shut everything else down and it goes real slow. But I was able to run Mistral and Zephyr and some other ones on my machine. So
go ahead, Austin.
I have used this app and I think it is very, very useful and easy. However, there is one thing that you still need to know. You need to know which model to download and which quantized version of the model to download, because it just shows files like Q6K, Q8O or something. And you're like, which one should I pick? And it doesn't give you any hints on that.
Absolutely.
So,
So,
I
do you have
guess
any recommendations to which of the three formats that we now have? GPTQ, GGUF, and another one, a new one, AWQ. I have never seen this one before. Do you have any recommendations of what to run when we have access to all three?
I don't know. I just played with it a bit, so I don't have any insights or knowledge.
For folks who are not as familiar with quantization, and we should briefly maybe mention that quantization is a way to reduce the size of the model weights file by removing some precision. And there's a few different methods for that. There's a GPTQ method and a GGUF method. Many of them came from llama.cpp, which is a project to run Llama very fast on CPU and GPU, and like on M1 where CPU and GPU is together. And they're like Arthur said, there is a way to run a smaller sized model, which will perform a little better as well. And so GPTQ and GGUF, and LLM Studio actually shows you capability as well. So if you drop this link, like Arthur is right, like don't just drop a link to Hugging Face of a model that somebody just released. Wait for the quantized versions. And usually the bloke, literally the bloke on Twitter, that's the account to follow for all these quantizations. I think they're sponsored by A16Z. And so many of the models that are friends of the pod, like Alignment Labs and Naus Research and Skunkworks, all these like great people release, many of these models are getting quantized very, very quick. So basically like the size is cut like almost in half. And you should choose the one quantized version that fits you. GGUF, in my experience, ran fine on my M1 Mac. But yeah, LLM Studio gives you the option to see if there's a capability. I see somebody who wants to raise their hand, and he says it's GPU poor, so that's usually a good sign. So Arthur, go ahead, and I'll bring Benjamin up.
Yeah, I don't know which quantized version to choose. Like there are, I don't know. I've just opened Hermes. I think it is the old one, and there are, I don't know, 10 different versions to download. Or if they could explain which is better, or maybe which is better for my hardware, it would be great, because I just don't know which one to.
Okay, so I think this is a great point for the community. Shout out to the folks who are fine-tuning these models. And also we need a guide of like hardware and which models to choose from between the quantized versions. Right. So we've covered Open Hermes 2 on Mistral 7B. This is like the first big fine-tune on Mistral 7B that Tickney released. Those are additional models they want to cover. I haven't written it down in my note, but I just remembered it. Somewhere before this like big release, the folks from Naus Research also released this very interesting model that I'm forgetting the name of, which was trained on the occult and the spiritual. And I thought it was really funny. Oh yeah, it was released on Friday the 13th. Literally a week ago in the day. It's called Mistral Trismegistus. Trismegistus. Yes, Trismegistus. This is the model, and I'll pin this to the top. And first of all, I'm loving the art that's accompanying all these releases, right? But definitely this one is a very interesting one. They collected a data set of just like a lot of specific, how should I say, occult and spiritual and esoteric knowledge and wisdom traditions, like all things paranormal as well, right? So if you wanna go a little bit off the regular LLM path and start asking your model how to, I don't know, resurrect ants, for example, or how to do like a summoning circle, stuff like this. If this tickles your fancy, then there's a model for you that's based on Mistral 7B. Don't expect it to be the best performing helper model, but I think it's very interesting that this like different data set exists, and they trained on 35,000 instruction responses for different subtopics in esoterica, like mysticism, hermeticism, necromancy, religion, meditation, and magic and spirituality, like all these things together thrown into like one big pot. And interestingly, I've tested both this model and the Hermes model, and I've noticed some changes, not a huge set of changes, because again, remember, those are fine tunes, right? So fine tune doesn't actually make the model, it makes the model better on different benchmarks, but the underlying model still knows what it knows, and fine-tune adds a bunch of like new information or new task ability. I just found it very interesting and funny, and I thought I would mention this. So Trismegistus, yeah. If this is for you, then try it out. It's definitely less of a safe model for sure. There's some instructions there that GPT-4 will not generate for you, like a resurrection circle. If this is something that you want to play with, there's a model for you. I think it's very interesting also to highlight the open source nature of these models and how different this is from the bigger labs, where I don't see anything like this coming from Anthropic, right? I don't see anything like this coming from like a big company that raised a bunch of money from VCs and tries to make the safest possible models. This type of things will only come from open source, and I love it. And this is why we love open source here on ThursdAI. So shout out to folks that are building these models and releasing them for us. Okay, I think the next thing that I want to cover briefly, there was one weird trick that was released on Twitter. It's called Neptune. So you know these like Twitter threads of folks who are trying to farm engagement, and they say there's one good trick to make something way, way better. And so this isn't one, because this came out with a paper and it came out with actual examples. There's this new method of fine tuning called Neptune. And the simple trick there is during training, people add some noise to the output of the embedding layers. And that's it. And so I pinned this tweet to the top from Omar from Hugging Face. I think the original thread was from Tom Goldstein, a professor at UMD. And they basically show that even for the model that we were already covered, like Open Platypus and different like other places, this Neft thing is improving the outcome with a significant amount. So on top of the regular SFT model. And again, I find it incredible that doing something as simple can give you like even like a 25% boost in performance. And I just wonder how many of those like quote unquote simple tricks we still have yet to cover. And the Nest is also working with QLoRa, which we've covered as well. And so if fine tuning is for you and you're using transformer libraries, I think they're going to add Neptune as well to the transformer fine tune library. And it's very easy. It's literally, you just add some noise. It's incredible. It reminds me, you guys know what it reminds me? We've covered this before, the yarn method. Sorry, the rope scaling method before yarn, rope scaling, rotational embedding. This was the same thing. There was this one guy who came out and said, hey, I have a way to extend the context length of Llama by adding 2 lines and basically changing like one thing in there. And everybody's like, what? This makes no sense. And then, yeah, this made sense. Not only it made sense, there was like a few papers following the rope scaling method and turned into the yarn scaling method. And this is the way that folks, friends of the pod, extend Llama all the way to 128K tokens. And now there's another simple trick where you just like literally, if you go to the tweet on top and you just scroll down a little bit, it's literally like there's code here. If training, return original embedding plus noise, else return original embedding. That's it. So during training, you just add a little bit of noise, and then your model performance becomes better by almost 25% and it scales from smaller models to bigger models. I find it incredible and worth mentioning as well. And I guess we've just unlocked for all these models, we just unlocked like 25% more performance. Any comments on this from folks? Oh, okay. Somebody commented that it's not all it's cracked up to be. Actually, it makes the model worse if you use a good base model like Mistral. So Wing, thank you from the comments. Wing, you're welcome to come up and tell us this. I'm often like following a lot of excitement, but some amount of realism is also helpful here. So as we said, for good models like Mistral, it may be actually reduced performance. So try and see. Yeah, let's get Wing here.
Hey, Alex.
Hello. Hey, Wing, nice to meet you. Do you mind, because you haven't been on stage, do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Yeah. I'm Wing. I'm the maintainer of Axolotl. So we do a lot of like run fine tunes and maintain a trainer around the Hugging Face trainer. And we've been trying to implement Neptune and sort of like validate the paper. One of the things they really didn't, they provided some hyperparameters, but I'm trying to re-replicate it with Llama. I just started with Mistral because that's what everybody's using nowadays anyways. So if you like look at I think there was like a tweet a couple days ago where TRL did it with the Guanaco data set, and it was like the empty bench of it was started like 4.5, right? Or 3.75, and it goes to 5. But I went ahead and tried to replicate it using Mistral on a similar Guanaco data set, like an instruct tune data set. And then I think it was the empty benches in that were like closer to 7. But like when you try and like do it with both, like I compared weight with weight decay with like alpha at 5, alpha at 20. And for most of those cases, you're just better off going without Neptune at that point. There's probably still some more like hyperparameter tuning that might needed to be done on that to validate it, but just like at face value, it doesn't seem like, and even they say like depends on your data set too. Like I think they said like on the Ultra Chat data set or one of those other data sets, it gets very minimal changes. And you sort of see that I think in their paper, they showed a loss distribution where they have the Gaussian distributions for the train loss for both with and without Neptune. And you see like this huge discrepancy in the train loss values. It's almost like if you were to stack it into a single chart, it would be like a bimodal distribution, but you don't really see that either when using Neptune, like at least not with like alpha 5. With alpha 20, it comes closer. So yeah, I'm a little skeptical.
I got it. Wing, thank you so much for commenting and coming to the stage. I'll just tell folks in the audience who are not maybe familiar with axolotl. Do you mind giving like a two sentence like intro to axolotl? Because I've heard from many of my Python friends that they all use it, but I'm not sure that everybody in the audience knows what it is.
Yeah. So really what we do is we try and take all of like when QLOR came out, we were trying to implement it into on top of the Hugging Face trainer within like a few days. So we basically take everything that's sort of cutting edge that people want to try out, drop it into the trainer, and then rather than trying to do all the configuration from the CLI, most of it's done from a YAML file. So you can just ship the YAML file, and anybody can try and reproduce what you've done. So yeah.
Awesome. And thank you for joining and also for working on this important tool. Like many folks recommend using axolotl in this community as well. So thank you. And actually in a live way, you reacted to this, and then Akshay here on stage, actually you've been with us before. So feel free to also introduce you briefly and then comment on Wing, and then Wing's comments on Neptune, and then we're going to continue down another path.
Greetings of the day, everyone, and thank you for the time here. I'm a student. I'm basically a hobbyist, 21 years old, doing whatever I can. And when this Neptune was released, I saw this tweet and immediately went on to try. I guess I got lucky because I chose a very simple data set. It's from Quora, and it's supposed to make your model question-based, right? And I observed that it didn't even cost much, to be honest, to fine-tune it, and it improved performance of this Mistral 7B base model. And that's what I was commenting for Wing also, that I tried this and it actually worked. So it's probably dependent on the data set you choose and the way you fine tune it. It's not probably that easy to, like, it doesn't work like not black and white. That's something I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks, Akshay. And yeah, definitely we'll keep seeing the responses from the community for this. So it's probably good to know that it's not like a one patch solution. So thanks, Wing, for coming up, and Akshay as well. Welcome to stick around. I think Wing actually mentioned the next thing that I wanted to mention, but it's not like an announcement or a new thing that released. It's just like a feeling that Mistral right now is the top dog in open source fine tunes, right? Like Mistral came out with its model, and we've talked about Mistral. Like I think this is the third consecutive space we're talking about Mistral, and it's just great to see how quickly the open source community just like decided, oh, you know what? Actually, there's this like better model that we can all start fine tuning on top of, and that just came out like a few weeks, maybe like 7 weeks after Llama 2, and is now extremely performant from a great team. There's a bunch of like great pre-training data there. It's like a great start for the rest of the community. And it's a fully open source with no strings attached. Like, and I just wanted to like highlight how awesome this is to have this type of model and this team in Mistral who are committed to open source fully. And so We already got connected to ThursdAI with the Mistral team. If you have a deeper connection and you know some of the folks, feel free to send me a DM with them together. I want to bring the Mistral team here on stage because we love open source LLMs as well. And they just need to know how much the community adopted everything that they did. And this is just the start, right? They're working on many other things. So we're definitely going to hear more from the Mistral team. And also shout out to Adept, who was committing to release open source and committing to release multimodal things. Hopefully we're going to see something multimodal from Mistral as well. I think they mentioned something briefly, but I'm not sure. I think these are all of the more important open source stuff that we wanted to cover, unless there was something else. To the audience, this is yet another live recording of the ThursdAI pod, all of the AI news from last week. And the community grows, and as it grows, there's more people join. So I just want to say hi to everybody in the audience who haven't joined yet. Simon and Wing and Lian for the first time. Welcome to Axolotl Dev. And I see Aydin in the audience who is welcome to come up because we're going to talk about the reason why you came up. Aydin, I'm going to send you another invite. And I see it's great to see the same folks come back from week to week. So shout out to everybody in the audience and folks on stage, Arthur and Akshay and Junaid. Welcome, as always, to discuss the greatest news. And I just want to shout out Jan Peleg, the staple of ThursdAI, a great friend of ours who cannot join because he's in the army. And Jan, take care of yourself, stay safe. And yeah, we'll move on. We're moving on to the big company updates. And there's plenty. Oh boy, there's plenty of big company updates. And so first of all, I will talk about Inflection. Do you guys remember Inflection AI? We're talking about Inflection AI. They're co-founded by Mustafa Suleiman, one of the co-founders of DeepMind, and Reid Hoffman, who was at the board of directors for OpenAI. And they're basically, how should I say, taking a different approach for the LLM space. And many people in our community actually don't love their approach. I personally love it. And if you go to heypi.ai, you can talk to a model. They, I think, were the first who released like a way to actually have like almost like a human conversation with voice feedback and your voice as well. And so if you download the HeyPi app, it looks like FaceTime, and you basically can talk to the model. And they released on May 2nd, and you can actually text with it, like literal text. There's a phone number. If you want it, 314-323-1111. You can text Pi, but this is like a funny tidbit. So why am I blowing up Inflections? Because this week they released two things. One of them was they connected Pi to the internet. So previously Pi was not connected to the internet, and so it was limited by the cutoff time. Many people thought that they have like a proxy on GPT-4, and that's not it. They have like their own model is trained differently. It feels differently. I've been saying this multiple times. Pi is the only model that made me laugh. GPT-4 never made me laugh. Pi actually made me like laugh out loud because of one response or two responses. I think I have it documented on my feed. And now they've added access to the internet. And you know what the funny thing is? These models, even with GPT, there's some distance between what a model knows to do and whether or not the model knows about its ability to do so, right? So like with some updates for GPT-4, when you ask it about some things about GPT-4, it doesn't know about itself. The same thing with Pi. If you ask Pi if it has access to the internet, sometimes it won't know. But if you ask it to go and search like a tweet or something, it will actually be able to tell you about that tweet. So it's funny. But they basically released access to the internet. And I just want to reflect back to when everybody said, hey, connecting these models to the internet is like the worst thing in the world, and Terminator will come the second you do this. And we've seen GPT-4 with Bing release, taken away and come back. So now GPT-4 with Bing is an option for you guys. But also we've seen open source agents are connected to the internet doing a bunch of stuff. And now we see another like big company like LLM is also connected to the internet, and not a lot of stuff is happening through the wars. And so I think that's fine, actually. That's great. So if you wanted to talk about Pi, about current events, or have it bring you some weather, it's not possible. And I think the second thing, and I think is a more bigger thing that they released quietly, is Pi has now two modes. There's a mode of kind of basic Pi conversation-wise, and there's another mode that is Pi support. And I want to pin the suite because I think it's very interesting. They basically have a separate mode, which I don't know if it's a fine tune, and I don't know if it's like a like a lore on top. They called it support pie. Let me pin this to the top of the space. It's not pinned, which basically, if you ask it, what is the support pie? This is their attempt at giving you a therapist. Now, very important note here for a second. An AI therapist will not be as good as a human therapist for sure. If you're suffering through some trauma and you want to work this out, go find a human therapist with experience. Go for the more experienced ones, trust me. However, a huge however here is there is so much more demand than supply for therapists, for good ones. There's so much more. People, first of all, are shy about the need for therapy, and nobody should be shy. Therapy is great. People don't have the time for it because many people just work 9, 10 hour, 11-hour days. People don't have the money for it. Let's be very, very frank. Like, therapy is expensive. Good therapy is very expensive. And finding time and money for that, in addition to the fact that it's stigmatized, is a whole big thing. And I definitely feel that the rise of AI agents with whom you can talk, even before you start a therapy session with like a professional, for free, without fearing judgment, because it's just a machine, right? You just talk to something that's just there. Nobody's there to judge you, basically. I think this is an incredible thing for humanity, to be able to have these tools, talk to these tools can talk back at you. And if they're fine-tuned on specific therapy stuff like support by is, I think it's a great, great, great thing. And I think we all should cheer this, because many, many stigmas will come down and many people will actually have somebody to talk to. And so I think it's worth shouting out that this now exists. If you're in the audience, if you're suffering from something like that and you don't have the ability to afford a therapist, you can try it and let me know. And if you want to talk to someone, DM me as well. Arthur, go ahead.
Just a joke there. Imagine that it will be trained on your secrets that you tell this AI therapist, and that will just then spit out to some random people as a response.
Yeah. Arthur, always here to bring us a little bit of Black Mirror. For sure. Sharing stuff about yourself, even though somebody tells you, hey, we'll not train on any of your inputs, sharing stuff about yourself it's up to you if you want to do. So connecting us to the previous thread that we had, open source is the way, right? If you download the Mistral 7B that's trained on support, and then you talk to it via LM Studio, then nothing is going to be trained. That's on your machine. And so this is why we personally love open source and edge computing and AI. But yeah, I agree. Take into account the fact that at some point, Inflection will be a paid company and it's a business. They have to run this business. And yeah, this is up to you. I can tell you guys my personal opinion about this. I don't care, because like I know how mixed things go within the training data set. So I find it very, very unlikely there will, like, if you train on my stuff, somebody will ask a question. It will say, oh, you know what? Actually, Alex asked the same question. And then this went into a tuning data set. But I understand the need for privacy, and open source is the way. And we've talked about this multiple times. So definitely great note here, Arthur. So support Pi is their support mode. When Pi is in this mode, they'll focus on providing support for wherever you're going through, and emotional support, relationship support, mental health, and stuff like this. Definitely worth at least noting the trend, if not checking out yourself. Definitely worth at least noting the trend, because this trend is clear. We're going to have doctor AIs, we're going to have mental health AIs, we're going to have friendly AIs, and this will connect with the multimodal stuff, right? So these AIs will not be able to understand the tone of your voice, or if you're hiding some pain and you're crying, but very, very, very soon they will be able to. So this is an update from Inflection. And we're moving on to another update from a huge company. Anthropic released Claude.ai to like 95 other countries. And so far, Claude.ai was this, to me, and I think Simon said this as well, one of the best free tools and free, I call them AI friends, but people call them different things. I mostly use Claude for most of my stuff. So I'll give you one example for when I use Claude. All the transcripts of ThursdAI, after I finish the transcript, I send to Claude the whole transcript. It's like, I don't know, 60,000 tokens or so, maybe 50,000 tokens. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I just sent to Claude because of the 100K context window. Claude can take this and a bunch of other stuff. So for example, I can give it like the transcript. Also, I can give it like a paper that we discussed, and then see what common trends are there. And Claude is free. They recently announced like a plus tier, and they announced limiting the amount of conversation you can have with Claude, which is annoying because I was used to like a free tier, a very generous free tier. But now Claude is released to a bunch of other countries. So folks from Ukraine, Israel, India, like a bunch of other countries outside of the EU can use Claude AI. And now they actually have some competition for ChatGPT. And Claude is great. You should use Claude. And yeah, I'm standing behind them for sure. Actually, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that fact about Claude that it was recently released in India, and it has a very nice wrapper on top of it. It's called Roast My Resume something, which is an excellent resume roasting platform. I tried it myself, and it just does a really good job of finding problems in a resume, but it's also very sassy in it. It will like really, in a really funny way, roast people's resume. And it was not possible with something like ChatGPT. But I believe that in this sense, it's better in that sense that it's funnier than ChatGPT. So that's what I want to mention.
Awesome. Thank you for that. For sure, Claude also has an API that you can apply to, and it was really hard to apply to it before. And now I think they've removed some restrictions. And so once you apply to their API keys, you will probably get them faster. Alfred, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also really excited that they have released it to Georgia, because usually all companies just avoid it, as you cannot be a GitHub sponsor for GitHub sponsorship program, or you cannot even be a Google Play publisher in Georgia. However, all remaining countries are included, but they have given access in Georgia for the cloud, and I think I will try it.
Awesome. And let us know how it went for you. Right. So today, folks, is Mojo Day. Why am I so happy? It's Mojo Day when Mojo was released a bunch of weeks ago. We've talked about Mojo multiple times, but maybe let me recap briefly. Chris Ladner, the guy behind Swift and the guy behind MLRI compiler and LLVM compiler, like all these incredible things. Yeah, he's working on a way to basically do Python++. And we've talked about Mojo multiple times in the past, because Python is this scripting language basically that's run like one-threaded, and there's been a bunch of attempts to make Python like go faster. But for most of the data science stuff like NumPy, it's actually C or C++ code below for performance. And basically recently, Chris Ladner joined a bunch of folks and then started hiring a bunch of folks after trying to get Swift to be the AI language, and then seeing languages like Rust and different other languages become very, very good, but also weird for some Python folks. And seeing attempts like llama.cpp perform very well for AI, they started working on a language that looked like Python, smells like Python, but has types and structs and different things. And today, the reason why we're bringing this up is because Mojo is now available on the Mac ecosystem. So Silicon M1 and M2. And I'm very happy because honestly, I have a machine that I can SSH into and use Mojo over there, but I really want to like develop on my machine, right? And I know for a fact that many developers have those machines as well, and they also want to do this. And so finally we got Mojo and on M1 and M2, and its performance is very nice. And so for that, I will invite Aydin to the stage. Aydin, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself, and then we're going to talk about the evaluation that you did.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I am Aydin, joining you guys from London. So I am interested in this rapidly evolving AI tech and always trying to learn concepts by crafting something new, and what could be a more interesting project rather than try to learn new language that is promising and that is supposed to be drop-in replacement for Python, but with the speed of the C. So exactly for this reason, like I will tell some like story behind the whole benchmark I implemented recently. So Mojo became available on Ubuntu and Linux early in September, and I implemented this port for llama 2.c from the Andrei Karpathy. And I implemented it on Mojo, and it demonstrated really promising results on my Ubuntu-based virtual machine. So actually, first version of the llama 2.mojo was implemented in a single threaded mode because I was not able to make it working in parallel. because it was failing, etc., etc. And in single thread mode, Mojo outpaced llama.c on Ubuntu with 6 cores Intel i7. So yeah, and just recently they announced that Mojo SDK will be available for general public like after in October, and I got early access and I had all the chance to benchmark how it behave, how it perform on Apple Silicon. So results indeed were quite interesting and quite promising. So yeah, however, I still consider my benchmark as a third iteration. So because there are so many little details to explore why this language behaves this way, other language behaves that way. So the whole story is that I took 12 different implementations of Andrej Karpathy's llama2.c on 7 different languages, including Mojo, including llama.cpp, mentioned by Alex just earlier. So I took all the implementations, compiled, built them on my Mac, and executed on 3 different baby llama models. Like baby llama models is like 15 million parameters, 42 and 110 million parameters. So they are really teeny baby llamas. So and I executed them in 30 rounds and collected all the metrics and prepared this report that was shared on Twitter. And what was the result and what we can see from the benchmark? To my amazement, the Mojo performance on Mac is right up there with Llama CPP, and it's really insane. It's if we will learn how the Llama CPP implemented internally, it has ton of optimizations like some blast, math, etc. I'm not expert in CPP at all, in high performance computations, etc. But I was relatively easily implement the similar performance solution on Mojo. So that was the most mind-blowing from this benchmark. And it was working even faster than the Llama 2C in multi-threaded mode. So that's really amazing, actually. But I also had some results, like, for example, Zig programming language implementation was showing similar performance in single-threaded mode and multi-thread mode. Probably I need to discover more, like how it's exactly implemented. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I misconfigured that in a way that it still uses multi-threaded computation when even I executed with the parameters of single-threaded. So yeah, but generally this is quite interesting. I would advise everyone who is interested in speeding up the model's execution to check this out, because I think this is a huge story. Before that, we were able to like increase the speed of the models by quantizing the model, like from the float point to integer, etc., etc. But my benchmark was fully executed in the float point 32 mode. So yeah, you can guys check this and give some feedback. Like, what do you think about my approach? Maybe I have some gaps that we can improve.
Incredible, Aiden. Thank you for coming up and thank you for doing like in-depth report. So just a summary for folks in the audience. Mojo, this is the promise of Mojo. This is the promise of Mojo. Drop-in replacement for Python that then you can progressively enhance towards struct, towards strong type language for systems engineers, and not only people who write like a script in Mojo. So to go all the way from, hey, let's play this within a notebook, like a Python notebook, all the way to let's put this in production and get to like a C++ level performance. And you took 7, 10 different implementations, different languages, right? So Go and Rust and Julia and Zig and C and C++, all these things, and you compared them on pretty much the same task as much as you could. And we shout out the community here. Please check out Aiden's work and see if you can like point out some things to improve. But you took all these implementations on baby llamas and ran performance tests on them. And C++ is the best performing one. And Mojo, without much optimization, is actually very, very close. Very close. Could you tell us about how easy this was to port into Mojo? how much you needed to change in the code?
Well, for me, because I had the Python version ported like a few months ago, I was just verifying my implementation with the Python. So it feels like Python when you're implementing things on a Mojo, but for some computational parts, you can easily introduce the SIMD vectors calculations. So like in C, you have to implement a lot of hardware specific, probably assembler level optimizations, but Mojo doing this under the hood automatically for you. That's why it simplifies the development of this kind of solutions. So it took me about 2 days on the weekend to write the first version that didn't have the parallelization support. And after a few days, some folks from the modular sent me pull request that fixes the issues with parallelize function, and it became even more faster.
That's incredible. And so, folks, Mojo is released today on the Mac, and you can play around with some demo. I did is the code release, so can folks pull your code and like play around with this as well?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
I meant, did you open source some of your work so folks can actually test as well?
Sure, I can share a link to the Llama 2 Mojo repository. So it already collected like 1,300 stars on the GitHub, so it's quite interesting to check out.
That's very awesome. Thank you. And folks, definitely follow Aydin. Thank you for this work, because it's one thing to release statements from the Mojo team and modular, and obviously they will select the best outcomes. But when the community comes and open sources test cases and shows the performance boosts and that we're all waiting for, I think that's great. And so I really wanted to thank you for this work and for coming and talking to us about this. I found it incredible. I found it incredible that your post about this only got like 3,000 views, because like we literally have a Python similar language that the promise of it is to be able to take this all the way to production performance. And now with a few days of work and a few pull requests, like you said, it goes up to the level of like Llama CPP. And Llama CPP, when you're gonna release Llama CPP, it was already great. But since then, there's like a whole insane community of like fine tuners and tweakers and performance optimizers that like just like squeezed every little inch of performance out of there. And to have Mojo fairly briefly get to that performance level just like underlines the promise of Mojo. And just shout out to the modular team for participating in this, and shout out to you, Aydin, for this work. And the community is more than welcome to join on this effort and give us more examples like this, or like check Aydin's work. So thank you so much for coming up here and talking about this and for doing this effort. Right. So Mojo excitement behind us, not honestly only behind us. I expect many new models that will come out with like a inference code on Mojo. And I expect that like full optimizations of Mojo will come. Also, Mojo is just a language as well, but Modular will have an inference platform that also on its own promises like optimizations there. And so we're going to continue updating you guys about this excitement, because who doesn't want faster models, right? So we can quantize and we can run them on Mojo, and we can unlock tricks like the thing we discussed, NIP, for training. So all these things are like coming one after another, and this is how it feels to accelerate. And I'm definitely here for it. So we'll keep you up to date. The last thing to cover in the big company APIs and LLMs is actually something that flew under the radar for many, many people. And I'm here to be that radar for you guys as well, right? Baidu, which is a huge company in China, had their AI day recently, a few days ago. And I was on the live. I don't know how I got there. I think Robert Coble, who was in the audience before, he was tuning in. So I was also tuning in. It was like 40 people on the live stream on Twitter. It was like, what? And probably millions in China. The live stream was actually simultaneously translated to English by a human, which is a thing that soon will be replaced by an AI model. We'll talk about this in a second. But Baidu announced incredible wealth of things. So there's this whole feeling that, hey, where's China, right? Like China is behind. China used to like copy a bunch of the US stuff. And there's the whole debate about, hey, we shouldn't stop open source, because if we stop, China won't stop and then we'll fall behind, like stuff like that. Well, China is not stopping, and China is not falling behind. And Ernie, the model that they released, the foundational model, which is a multimodal model, like a full multimodal, understands videos, understands images, can generate images, can generate videos as well. They call it Ernie 4. And now, not only did they not release this, sorry, they announced this, and it's within their infrastructure. There isn't even an API that we can test, which is a shame. They've also integrated this to multiple products. So they're taking like a little bit of a different approach, because essentially Baidu is like the Chinese Google, let's say, competitor, right? It's not like the OpenAI that releases models and then builds products with them. They already have products. They have the maps, they have ride hailing, right? Like autonomous ride hailing, which I think they also announced that like Baidu has like the biggest autonomous ride hailing fleet in the world. And they've announced this Ernie model, and they've announced that it's integrated to like a bunch of solutions for them. They have announced that this Ernie is integrated into, it has capabilities in understanding, generation, and reasoning, and memory. Memory was the very interesting part to me, because we talk about RAG, we talk about context window, we talk about different things, and Ernie has some stuff like this built in. And I think that what I found incredible is they have an AI map built in. So they have a competitor of Google Maps basically within Baidu, and they have a map solution for like what you know from maps. And they've integrated Ernie inside this map, where you can get recommendations of where to go just directly from the map interface, integrating this Ernie thing. It can help you plan routes. It can help you do a bunch of other stuff. Obviously, those are claims on stage from this company, and we should take them with a grain of salt. And if you know me and you've been to ThursdAI, I do get excited about like promises, and then we need to double check them as well. So this is why we're coming to you week from week to then also check this. If you're in the audience, are Chinese and you're able to check the Baidu stuff, and you have already, feel free to raise your hand and come up and talk to us about the Ernie stuff. However, once we get more experience with this, we'll also come back next week and talk about this. However, again, not only did they announce this like very significant foundational model called Ernie, not only are they showing their prowess in training models, we've also talked about the Chinese connection to the UAE and the Falcon stuff, and how China is investing in the UAE and releasing like bigger models. The integration part, where they integrated this into pretty much everything, is the most incredible part to me, because it's one thing to release foundation models. It's a whole another thing to like bake them into your products. And one additional thing that I wanted to highlight as an integration thing is they've integrated this into their basically Google Drive. They call it Udio Drive, something like this. And imagine a Google Drive where you can search, find your videos, and then you can summarize the videos inside based on extracting text from it, etc. So they have this multimodal AI agent built into your drive where all your files and videos sit, and you can like pinpoint an exact frame within a video based on their claims again. It can extract frames and statements from videos and can summarize videos, and can also transcribe and add subtitles, which is something that near and dear to my heart because of Targum. And basically you have like a Google Drive with a built-in AI agent. I found it very cool. And because I'm like, where is Google? Why isn't my Google Drive does this, right? Like why isn't like Dropbox does this? Dropbox announced like an AI thing, but I've never even tried it. Honestly, it sounds a little bit fell flat, the announcement. Sorry for folks from Dropbox if you're listening to this, but very exciting announcement from Baidu. Very interesting timing as well, before Google starts ramping up their stuff with Gemini, which is supposed to be multimodal and supposed to come at some point. Google is working really hard at implementing all these like toys within Google Drive, and Gmail now has AI that I haven't really used myself. And very interesting timing of this release from Baidu. So I think that's most of the announcement. If folks have comments or have tried anything, I welcome this. And we also definitely want to understand that the AI innovation will not only come from Silicon Valley as it has so far, or France, right? France is a big player as well, Mistral, and there's a bunch of Hugging Face folks. Probably most of the top Hugging Face folks in France, Jan LeCun and Meta AI. There's like a whole fair team in France as well. So it's somehow Silicon Valley and France and some other places. And now we also have China stepping in and showing us what they have. I'll say this one last thing. I heard this argument before about China not wanting very strong foundational models because the immediate thing that people will do with foundation models is ask about Tiananmen Square. And China doesn't want you to know about Tiananmen Square. And so they will have to arrive at alignment before everybody else just because of the restriction in speech and, some stuff they want to hide from the general population. And I actually am very interested to see how these models perform on the stuff that China tries to hide from the Chinese folks with the Great Firewall. So very interested in seeing how this performs on some of the stuff that like the CCP wants maybe hidden. However, I don't speak Chinese or Mandarin, and if anybody does and has tried this, let us know and come up on next ThursdAI. The next incredible thing. Okay, this is probably the best thing, and I'll go and find my tweet about this to pin to you guys as well. Meta. You know that I love Meta, especially because of the insane amount of open source they're doing and insane amount of progress. Not to mention, they have the same vision as I, which is removing language barriers from the world is good. And they're releasing stuff like Seamless MT, releasing stuff like MLLB, No Language Left Behind, translation models, like all these things. Not to mention that Meta recently released like a whole slew of AI agents on everyone. So everybody from my mom to my cousins can use AI within WhatsApp now. And I don't know if you used it. It's pretty fun. It's like a toy. I don't really see the need to use that AI versus something, but it definitely looks like they're implementing llama-based agents everywhere. And Instagram is a place where many teenagers hang out. So probably they just like gave a bunch of teenagers access to AI stuff. Meta is not resting on their laurels. I want to just print this tweet. They shared new research. I don't know if you guys seen this. They shared new research to talk about one step closer to real-time decoding of image perception from brain activity. So I'll say this again slowly, and this has been a tweet of mine that's been blowing up. Real-time decoding of images from brain activity. And so we've talked about this modality before multiple times on ThursdAI, actually. There's a company called MedArc that talked about building a multimodality based on fMRI scans. And this fMRI scans basically turn images that the person saw while they were undertaking the MRI scanning into renderings with stable diffusion. And they seem very, very similar. However, this is a whole new thing because what Meta is basically showing is that they're able to extract magnetic something. Let me find the actual paper. Magnetoencephalography, which is a non-invasive neuroimaging technique, which measures like thousands of brain activity measurements per second. And the cool thing about what they're doing is, unlike the fMRI stuff, which is really hard and expensive to do, Meg is cheaper. It's literally like a device. It's a huge device that you basically sit and it's like a huge crown on your head, but it's like almost real time. And they're able to do this brain activity reimagining in almost real time. And I found that just like mind blowing, excuse me for the pun, that it's now possible to sit within like a huge machine. Yes, expensive. Yes, all this, and then have a image model to just generate basically what you're looking at just from your brainwaves, just from this like measurements. Is it scary that Meta does this? Maybe to some people. Is it scary that it's possible? Definitely for many people. But I personally find it like very interesting for multiple reasons. First of all, there's many people who are able to speak, and this will help them for sure. There's multiple research avenues into our brain and consciousness that will be possible. Like imagine this scan for somebody who like is, I don't know, in a 5-hour meditation and to see like what they experience in there. This is just like one of the more incredible things that are getting unlocked with this technology. And so I think that it's very easy to imagine a Black Mirror scenario here, and Arthur feel free to chime in after that. But I find it incredible that how much this unlocks for the for medical research and for people who are like not able to tell us what they see. And definitely this brings us closer to human and machine interaction, BCI type stuff, because Neuralink basically can do the same. They talked about this on stage. They can analyze brain activity, and Neuralink is invasive, and this Meg thing is not invasive. No, it's still not portable. It's still not possible to just like walk around and like put on glasses and the glasses read from what you can do. But we've seen similar attempts with EEG signals as well. And then we saw some patents from, I think, Apple, that they have like an EEG sensor built into like a basically AirPod form factor. And so definitely we're on this path. And this research from Meta is just showing how possible this is to do this. And it's a start. And as everything else that we talked about, like 70 billion parameter models, 7 billion parameter models that's 10 times as small can now outperform several tasks. This will also start to get better and better. And the hardware is going to get smaller and smaller. So I'm excited. Arthur, are you excited?
Oh, yeah. And I will talk about the bad things that can come with that. I also think that with Gaussian splats and the 4D Gaussian splats that we saw on Twitter in the last days, basically the video of, Gaussian splats with video, I guess it will be possible to reconstruct it in a way just like brain dance in Cyberpunk video game. You would be able to see 3D scenes and navigate through them in real time. And I think it will be very amazing. We're just living in the era where all your favorite sci-fi video games or movies or books are just coming through.
So Gaussian splats, for folks who aren't familiar, maybe familiar with NERFs. That's the next maybe iteration, right, Arthur, of NERF, basically taking a few pictures from different angles, not that many, and then recreating a full 3D scene. And I think it's also like frozen in time, and you can like maybe do some other stuff. And Arthur, I think you mentioned that we saw Gaussian splat videos as well, where like you can basically do what Matrix did in '99 with like a bunch of cameras, but from a few pictures. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so that's definitely incredible to see the progress there. And just to be able to then recreate this from brain activity is a connection that I haven't made so far, Arthur. So thank you for that. Yes, definitely an exciting future there. So folks, multimodality is involved in here as well, because fMRI and this MEG and EEG, all of those are definitely going to be one modality of like these models that we're going into. So LLMs is no longer a thing. MLLMs, which is harder to say, multimodal LLMs, is where we're going, and they will be with us everywhere. And the modalities that will not only just be images and text, there will be more modalities, like, for example, MEG signals or fMRI. Let's see. I think we've covered most of the major stuff. Let's say, okay, one maybe last thing that I wanted to cover let's talk about voice for a second. So we've talked about voice just a little bit in the Pi segment, but let me reiterate the voice stuff. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, OpenAI released like a bunch of stuff together. And it was really hard to kind of parse them, and not many people got access to all of the things at once. I think since then, everybody got access to GPT-4 voice, or GPT-3 if you're not paying for Plus. If you haven't tried it yet, my strong recommendation to open the ChatGPT app and try it. And the way you try it is there's like almost like a phone, I think it's fall thing, like an icon there that you can press, and then it connects. I think it does like a WebRTC connection. It connects to ChatGPT, and basically you can talk with it. And let me tell you, this interaction mode with ChatGPT is incredible, especially if you have like AirPods, you just walk around. It's not yet like talking to a person. Specifically, one reason that came up to me of why not is because it doesn't have a time sense. So, but I'll give you an example of what I did with this voice thing. I cooked. My mom was asleep on the other side of the world, and I needed to cook something very specific. And I put on ChatGPT, put it in voice mode, put it in my pocket. The beautiful thing is you don't have to type, and so you can just do other things if you have AirPods, for example. And ChatGPT released an application update, at least on iPhone. I don't know about Android, where the conversation continues when your phone is locked, right? So it's like a phone call, basically, like a FaceTime. So I was literally walking around the store asking ChatGPT for different things, it would give me different things. And I drove back. It was with me during the whole drive. I was talking to the ChatGPT model the whole drive about what am I going to cook with this. And then when I came home, it actually was with me when I was cooking. So I literally spent, 2 hours talking to ChatGPT about very specific things. Now, it's still ChatGPT. It's still GPT-4, and it's not fine-tuned for longer conversations. So, for example, a very funny example of that was one of the instructions was, hey, boil a pot of water, right? I was making borscht. Boil a pot of water. And then literally humans have it built into them that boiling a pot of water takes time. And so they wouldn't ask you every second sentence, is the water boiled yet? But because these models don't have a concept of time built into their conversation skills, literally after that step in the cooking process where I needed to ask it, hey, just be with me during the cooking process, it literally every sentence afterwards, it asked me, how's the water? Is the water boiled yet? Is the water boiled yet? And I was like, no, it takes some time. It's yes, it's okay. Water takes some time. And so I had to come up with some stuff to make the ChatGPT busy. Maybe I asked it to give me a quiz about something. I asked it to give me some tidbits about the food process, whatever. But it still kept going back about has the water boiled. So I found it really funny that it's not there in terms of conversation because it doesn't understand the temporal kind of progress of things. However, this whole interaction model was novel for me, really novel. I can't imagine me typing all this in that long conversation. Maybe I should share this on Twitter, the whole conversation that I had about me making borscht, but I can imagine me typing all this. Imagine you're trying to cook and you also need to type. Not very, very fun, is it? So definitely the multimodality of it being able to listen to you and talk is a whole huge thing. Definitely check it out if you haven't. Pi has a similar thing, but I don't think Pi one works where you close the phone. And I think the best thing about this, where I don't have to keep the phone in front of my head. So we're moving towards a world integration. Imagining the multimodal world where ChatGPT also sees what I see and listens to what I listen. I think it's going to be an update for many, many people in terms of how useful these agents are or models are, not agents yet. So multimodal voice thing, definitely a very strong new interaction model with ChatGPT. And similar to this, in a similar vein, you guys know that we talked about multiple voice generation softwares, open source and non-open source, right? So OpenAI has their own that they've trained, and we heard from Spotify that they've actually used the OpenAI model to translate the podcast. OpenAI hasn't released this open source. They don't want to, which is fine. But we do have a bunch of open source ones like XSST from Coq.ai that we talked to a couple of weeks ago, friends of the pod. And this week, Play.ht, which is one of the more advanced ones for voice generation, announced something incredible. Play.ht, let me just go and find this announcement real quick. They basically have a real-time AI conversation built in, right? So ChatGPT wouldn't be as helpful to me if it taken a minute to generate everything that it wants to say. Play.ht now shows an example of generating voice with under 300 milliseconds latency. I'll say this again, very slowly. They have a blazing fast conversational AI text-to-speech model with under 300 milliseconds latency. So if you use the 11 labs before, give PlayHT a try. They're definitely significantly faster as far as I see. And I think there was research from Google a long time ago that for humans, everything under 250 milliseconds is basically instantaneous. They talked about clicking, they talked about web UI and interaction. So 300 milliseconds with cloned voices and accents is basically for real-time agent interaction. I think is incredible. And anybody who builds a voice interface should definitely try that. Anybody who's afraid of their voice being cloned, we're already there. We've covered this multiple times before, but you can basically clone your own voice or somebody else's voice from 10 seconds or 30 seconds of audio. And then now you have a real-time ability to build conversational agents. And I find it super, super cool. So definitely check out play.ht. And I think that this covers most of everything that we wanted to cover. And I think the last thing that I wanted to cover, I'll go and find right now.
Yeah, slightly unrelated, but I wanted to talk about if you guys have had any interaction with Adobe's Firefly recently, because it was updated. Initial days, it was not really good. I did not like it at all. Felt very synthetic, but it was recently updated and I was trying it out the other day. I have few photos. I'll tweet about it later today. Now the decorations or, for example, whatever you want added into the picture feels way too natural. Right now, Adobe does this CR thing where they put these credentials with each image in the metadata, where it says that it has been generated using AI. But the image seems way too real for me. I tried it besides Midjourney and DALL-E 3. And for me, at least in my opinion, the images generated using Adobe's Firefly seems way more natural than the other two. So that is something I wanted to bring up because I don't know if it was discussed earlier.
Actually, thank you. This was literally in my notes. I was about to skip this because look at the time, but thank you for bringing this up. We had John Neck from Adobe AI team on ThursdAI. He's a dear friend of the pod. And when they announced Firefly, he came up. And when they now generative fill for Photoshop, which kind of uses Firefly behind the scenes, where you can select some parts of the image and just generatively fill them. I found that incredible as a power tool. And yes, they announced Firefly 2. Thank you for bringing this up. Some images there for people specifically, they've added so much realism that there's skin blemishes, there's different things. It looks so good. It doesn't look like washed out, airbrushed examples of what we gotten used to from Midjourney. And so judging what's AI art and what's not AI art, I think is going to be much more difficult after Firefly. And this is why they added some stuff to the metadata. So they released this beta of Firefly 2. It's free on Adobe's website. All you need is basically an Adobe account. And it's if you are after realistic images, this is the way for now, at least. They also have generative match where you can upload a picture. Let's say you go to DALL-E and you generate something with DALL-E and you like it, but then you want it more realistic. You can upload that. It's called a generative match. It's basically image to image, but they have their own flair additions to that. So if you have an existing example of how you want the image to look, you're also able to create that. The cool thing they also have is a prompt remix, which Ideogram we've talked about as well. Ideogram from folks from Google, ex-Googlers came out. So they have a prompt remix, which you can take one generation of theirs. Let's say actually we'll share something. We'll also share a link. You'll be able to take that link and then continue iterating on that prompt and that image. And then they also have prompt suggestions. I don't know which model they use actually with Adobe. I don't think Adobe has an LLM yet. So they're probably using GPT or something. But they have prompt suggestions. So as you type the prompts, it will give you some suggestions. Those weren't that great, honestly, to me. But the whole suite of new things that you get with Firefly is actually very, very interesting. Go ahead, actually.
Yeah, just another addition to that. I am in love with Adobe's this feature of you can leave the prompt blank and observe the magic that Firefly does. It's absolutely stunning. You can choose the subject and then leave the prompt blank. And in fact, I think if you're using it for the first time, they will ask you to leave the prompt blank and try it. So that is another thing that I wanted to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I need to try to leave a prompt blank entirely and then see what happens. Yeah, I think the last thing that we want to talk about is coming up. But before that, I saw Robert, you raise your hand and come up from the audience. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a cool vision that lately with all those therapy tools like DI and the ChatGPT voice, where you can basically talk to AI, it blows us closer to the scenario of the movie Her, where you're talking to the device and then you basically don't need any human anymore just because you have fulfilled your social duty. And yeah, I just wonder where all of these will take us. And also seems like Rewind and those wearable devices are also the next step to this. I don't know where is it going, but it's it looks like AGI and complete merging human with AI. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert, for coming up. So I'll just say, because you're new here on the stage, ThursdAI is mostly focused on the updates. We sometimes talk about implications, but mostly those are reserved for other spaces. However, it's important to know that many of the stuff that you're talking about are trends that are happening. So last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago, we talked about the wearable revolution, basically Tab from Avi, and then the Humane Pin and Rewind Pendant, all these things that are coming very, very soon, that AIs, our personal AIs will also like listen to what we're listening. We're also noticing the trend of talk to the agent as much as possible. And I actually had this idea of interviewing either Pi or ChatGPT here on the ThursdAI pod, actually bringing them into the space. And I was thinking whether or not it's going to be interesting. And you know what I arrived at so far? So far, I thought that it would be boring and people will not actually would like it. If you feel differently, if you want me to like interview an AI here live on stage or like in the podcast, and if you listen to an AI podcast versus like a human to human podcast, do let me know, because I am interested in like what people feel about this. My current feeling about this is that humanity will not disappear just because there's AI people, or sorry, AI people, funny. There's AI agents that we can talk about and with, even though they have voices that sound human, even though they have like empathy modes that they can turn in. My current feeling is that humans is the thing that imbues all of that with intent and connectivity. And even though it's a good start to talk to like Pi's support mode, because maybe you're shy and you don't want to talk with other humans and you're like embarrassed, I think it's just the start. I don't think it's a complete end-to-end journey. Personally, to me, like the humanity aspect of being here with all of you, even though you're all like in the digital realm with me, I don't see any of you here. But to me, like this personal aspect is what makes it fun, is what makes it interesting. Because Robert, when you came up, I had no idea what you're about to say, but I had an idea that you're a person with opinions and not an AI with opinions. And so we'll see if that changes within me, if that changes within us. And we'll see if I'm going to eat my hat and then bring an AI collaborator here that will be actually doing the research for me and maybe pinning tweets. So thanks for coming up and bringing this up. And on the same topic, continuing the same topic to the end of the space, is I pinned the AI Techno Optimist Manifesto from Mark Andreessen. And I just want to highlight that ThursdAI is adhering to the Techno Optimist Manifesto. And if you haven't realized this by now, you should listen to some older episodes. It was a great essay by Mark Andreessen that does a bunch of this stuff. He's very progressive about the future and very libertarian in the approach. So I don't agree with everything that's written there, but for sure, I personally think, and this space is modeled based on that technology is what drives humanity forward. And we use technology in different other areas. And so we can definitely see bad outcomes. We can see potentially harmful outcomes, but technology is technology. And we should look forward for this progress because it's happening anyway. And being scared of something that happens anyway is just like a bad way to live, me personally. And so the techno-optimist approach is that technology changes is good, and humanity will find a way to use this for good as well, even though it's potentially some of it is destructive. And so I recommend everyone to read the Techno-Optimist Manifesto and internalize this as well. And ThursdAI is definitely adhering to the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. And the whole point of these is not to only give you updates, but also to walk through actual use cases of the stuff that's coming out and talk through the changes from week to week so that people will not be fearful of change, because people do not like change. Many people actually, they want to stay behind. Some of the horrible stuff that we see around the world is happening because people want to bring back what once was. And that's not what we stand for. And so Techno-Optimist Manifesto definitely worth a read. We're here from week to week to talk about everything that's interesting in AI. If you missed part of it, or if you want to listen again, this will be released as a podcast on ThursdAI.news. You can go and get there from my profile, from ThursdAI profile, which is a speaker as well. And there's a newsletter and a podcast. At the end of the newsletter, there's always an emoji that you can use to DM me, that I'll know that somebody at least read it all the way to the end. So I'm expecting some of your DMs. And with that, I want to wish you a great Thursday. Go play with Mojo. Go check out the meta stuff about real-time brain activity, understanding and decoding, and definitely talk to Pi and ChatGPT with voice mode and let us know what you think about those. And if you speak Mandarin and you have access to everything, I want to hear from you next week, right? So if you do have access, let us know, because the whole AI thing is multicultural, multilingual, and we just want to see where everybody's at. So with that, I'll let you go. Thank you for joining.